Negative G's, the sensation of floating, defying gravity. More simply put, airtime. Not all airtime is equal. You got your long sustained moments, your quick pops, your gentle floater, and then the kind that we're going to talk about today, your ejector. This isn't as much floating in midair as it is being launched out of a fighter jet. I already did a list of my favorite airtime moments, and some of the moments on this list appear on there also, but powerful isn't always going to be my favorite. For example, my number one airtime moment is the Outer Banked Hill on Steel Vengeance, but I wouldn't consider that an insane ejector moment. I love it mainly for its sustainability, so it doesn't even crack this list. This list is all about power. Those moments that test those upstop wheels and those lap bars that work together to save your life. These are North America's strongest airtime moments. I went through my credit list and picked out 30 moments, and I figured, hey, why not list them all? So this is probably my biggest countdown yet. Let's get started. Number 30. Full throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the final drop. Here's a moment with so much potential, but it only ranks 30th on this list thanks to the brakes. These brakes made full throttle top my list of the biggest buzzkills on coasters that I've ridden. As you launch out of the tunnel and fly over the loop, you crest that near vertical drop, and if you're in the back row, you go flying out of your seat for a split second before the train slows down. The ejector is even good in the front row, but it's that back row ride that makes this qualify for the list. Number 29. Wildfire at Silver Dollar City, the first drop. I would have had this a lot higher a year ago, since my one back row ride in 2018 gave me an absurd pop of ejector that I wasn't expecting. My 2020 rides were weaker. The first one was almost nothing, and the second one was a little better. I think it just needs a full train to get the full experience over that drop in the back row. So maybe once Silver Dollar City can get 32 people on at a time, I'll give this another shot and see if I can move it back up. Number 28. Raven at Holiday World, the last big drop. This classic Woody. Can I call it a classic even though it's only 25 years old? Anyway, this classic Woody stays low to the ground and focuses a lot on speed and an out of control feeling. But then it rises up, still with a full head of steam, and drops you down to gain all the speed it needs to finish the course strong. That straight drop off that last big hill is an intense airtime moment. Just hope that you aren't stapled by that time so you can really enjoy it. Number 27. Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas, the drop off the turnaround. This old Schwarzkopf nearly pulls 6 Gs through its double loops, and you feel it. It's a gray out moment for me. They don't make loops like these anymore. But it's not just a positives machine. In addition to smashing you into your seat, it'll also toss you out of your seat. After those 2 loops, as you're barely getting your vision back, you pop into a turnaround, and that drop right by the final brake run will fling you straight up into your tiny metal lap bar. It's a little uncomfortable, but if you're an airtime junkie like me, it's worth it. There are other airtime drops on Shockwave, but this one is by far the strongest. Number 26. The Intamin Accelerator coasters, the Top Hat. This is, of course, Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm, Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, and King to Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. These top hats are vastly different sizes, but the ejector coming down is good no matter which one you're riding, whether it be the 400-foot Stratus with a spiral drop, or the 200-foot original with a twisted drop. The airtime is intense. Number 25. Phoenix at Knoebels, the double down. Before 2020, I never would have considered this to have strong airtime, but after my latest rides, I thought of 2 contenders for this list. There's the hill right before the second turnaround, and the element that I chose for this list, the double down. This is right before the turn that leads into the finale, and every time I rode this in the back seat this time around, I got yanked out of my seat before we bottomed out. Number 24. Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, the switchback hill. You may be thinking of the drop out of the station as the best ejector moment, but for me, this is more of a gut punch than an airtime moment. But there's one other moment where I get ejected, and it's not even that little hill before the second launch. It's that switchback hill where the train quickly changes directions. If you're in the back row, you're not even facing this element, so it catches you off guard, which makes it even crazier. This is an underrated element of the ride. Easy to overlook, but really powerful. Number 23. Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm, the drop off the mid-course. Here's one that made my top 10 favorite airtime moments. It's strong, which is why it's on this list, but it's not the strongest, which is why it's only number 23. I love it because it's both powerful and sustained, and sets the table for the crazy second half of this top 10 coaster. As long as the train does not slow down on the mid-course, this drop in the back row is amazing. Number 22. Iron Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, the cliff dive. This is basically the same story as Ghost Rider's drop. It's one of my top 10 favorite airtime moments, and it is strong, but I love it because of how sustained it is once it launches you out of your seat. This was the perfect way for this ride to end, diving off the quarry wall and tossing everyone in the back of the train into their lap bar. Number 21. Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm, the Ejector Hill. For a pretty graceful ride, Gerstlauer wanted to mix up the forces a little. It's a short, inversion-based ride, but after the cutback over the station, it goes into a double down element that delivers a powerful moment of airtime before the Cobra roll. By this time, your lap bar is pretty far down, so you'll feel your stomach going up to your throat more than your butt leaving the seat. Number 20. Copperhead Strike at Carowinds, the Ejector Hill. After a not so powerful launch and a hang time filled first loop, Copperhead Strike decides to launch you out of your seat with a small ejector airtime hill. I have a problem with these mock rides lap bars, so by this time I'm usually kinda stable. But if you can avoid that, this is a really strong moment of airtime. Number 19. Maverick at Cedar Point, the Camelback. This Intamin Blitz starts with a pretty good ejector moment with that 95-degree drop before entering some switchback turns, and then it pops up into a Camelback at full speed. I don't like these Intamin over-the-shoulder restraints. I think that big bar on your lap is very restricting, but it doesn't take away from the power of this Camelback. Number 18. Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, the Head Shop Drop. So many great airtime moments on Steel Vengeance, but most of them aren't super powerful. They're more than gentle floater, just not strong enough to be on this list, except for one that stands out above the rest. After the mid-course brake run, the ride enters the next run of airtime hills, capped off with one that banks to the right and then dives down to the left, into the ride's structure, causing a crazy head chopper effect while throwing you out of your seat. This element gets overlooked, but it packs in so many great things that coaster enthusiasts love. Number 17. Goliath at Six Flags Great America, the Ejector Hill. This RMC Woody wasn't built with the abundance of airtime like the one that we just talked about. It really just has two good moments, one being the first drop, and the other being this ejector hill right before the dive loop. You go flying into this hill coming off the big overbank turnaround, and it does a good job making up for the lack of airtime in the rest of the ride. Number 16. Diamondback at Frontier City, the drop out of the station. I had to include this Aero shuttle loop on the list. It's such a weird model, where you have to climb to the top of the platform just to get to the ride. But it's worth it, because that dive to the ground right out of the station is crazy intense in the back row. Ride the front row for some wild airtime coming down backwards off the second launch. But in terms of pure, strong airtime pops, Diamondback in the back row gets a spot on this list. Number 15. Electric Eel at SeaWorld San Diego, the Twisted Drop. After the slow barrel roll at the top of this ride's layout, this premier ride Skyrocket 2 dives straight down and does a 180-degree twist to turn itself back around. This drop is controlled by a trim brake, but in the back row, you have plenty of whip to make this an insane airtime moment. I picked this over some of the other Skyrocket 2s that I've ridden because it has a 3-car train. So does Tigris and Tempesto, so you can throw these into the mix also. And the 3 cars over the 2 cars gives you that extra whip that you need to make up for the brakes. Number 14. Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom, the Camelback. There were a few options for Storm Chaser, which is an absolute ejector machine. But I think the strongest airtime of the ride comes right after the barrel roll down drop, where you fly into a giant Camelback which tries to launch you into Indiana. I prefer the Trick Track double up for the rapid fire off-axis airtime, but I think the Camelback takes the cake when it comes to sheer power. Number 13. Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia, the last big drop. The second half of this RMC is full of small, strong airtime hills, but it's that drop into the structure that does it the best. It's my favorite part of a ride that could really use more parts. Short, but sweet. Number 12. Coaster at Playland, the drop off the second turnaround. You can ride this in the front or the back and get a totally different experience. I thought the front had more airtime, but it wasn't as strong, while the back made me feel like I was gonna fly out and die. The most extreme example of this was the drop off the second turnaround. The train drags you straight over it, and you get acquainted with your single position lap bar that's not even close to your body. This whole ride is worth the trip to Vancouver, but I think that this moment in the back is really one of a kind. Number 11. Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the Blue Camelback. I talk a lot about this element. Sometimes you just have to appreciate a great moment of pure ejector airtime. No twists, no hitches, perfect proportion for its speed. And to top it all off, you have the green train right above your head in its Top Gun stall. All of the ride's power is trying to throw you into that train, but the lap bar is keeping you in. Number 10. Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America, the first drop. B&M put a pre-drop on their first two hypers, Apollo's Chariot and Raging Bull, and never did it again. It's a shame, because it gives the train a little speed coming off the lift, which makes the whip over the drop that much better. In Raging Bull's case, in the back row, you're launched out of your seat and you stay there the whole way down the 208-foot drop. It's a top 5 airtime moment for me, but only number 10 in terms of strength. Number 9. West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the High Five. This only applies to the white side. The yellow High Five is a little more awkward, and it doesn't do quite as good of a job delivering the airtime. It can catch you off guard. It definitely did so for me the first time. It's a chaotic moment of lateral ejector that will dig your comfort collar into your neck. But that's okay. A small price to pay for an amazing airtime moment. Number 8. El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, the Camelbacks. These were my favorite elements for a long time, before Steel Vengeance came along with that Outer Bank. And just like the Twisted Colossus Blue Camelback, these are just pure moments of airtime bliss. It doesn't get much stronger than this, and it doesn't get much more sustained than this. These Camelbacks are huge, and you can enjoy all that airtime all the way down to the bottom of the hill. Number 7. Skyrush at Hershey Park, the first airtime hill. The lap bar will crush you. It's just gonna happen. Even if it doesn't hurt, it'll still keep you from getting good airtime the second half of the ride. If this wasn't the case, that final airtime hill may make this list. But there is one amazing hill at the beginning of the ride that makes this list. That first hill right after the first drop and the turn. I really appreciated this the last time I rode it, and it's one of the main reasons that I moved this up on my list for 2020. Number 6. Classic coaster at the Washington State Fair, the Twisted Drop. This is kind of a rare credit for me, since not many enthusiasts get to the Pacific Northwest, and this fair is only open for a few weeks a year. It has some permanent coasters, which is unusual for a fairground, one of which is a 1935 John A. Miller Woody called Classic Coaster. It's a smooth and mild ride full of hills, but there is one drop right after the first turnaround that just isn't right. Its insanity comes from the twist to the right when you're plunging down. It's downright violent, especially because you have a single position lap bar that doesn't seem like it's doing much to keep you in. I noticed the back row of each train has a seatbelt, and that has to be because of that one drop. Number 5. The RMC Raptors, the Twisted Airtime Hill. Railblazer at California's Great America and Wonder Woman at Six Flags Fiesta Texas have a bunch of crazy fast-paced elements in their 1,800 feet of track. But you can't help but marvel at the Twisted Airtime Hill and how fast the train goes through it. After a vertical drop, the train goes through a dive loop, and then heads back under its lift with this off-axis twisted hill. And it's one of those rare moments where you can feel your whole body being pulled upward, your organs, your skin, everything getting yanked to the sky. The actual airtime isn't that great, because you have that shoulder harness, but they don't cover up the power of those negative G's. Number 4. Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood, the finale. This isn't really one moment. It's a series of 4 airtime hills right before the final turn into the brake run. The first half of this arrow-turned-Morgan hyper is full of speed, but once the train emerges from the tunnel and turns around, you're hit with 4 moments of airtime, the last 2 being a double down that just doesn't seem possible. It feels like the train is gonna be torn apart. With those weird little lap bars, you'll feel every bit of this crazy ejector finale. Number 3. El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, the Rolling Thunder Hill. I didn't want to give the same coaster 2 spots on this list, but El Toro is the exception. The Camelbacks are amazing, and they're my favorite part of the ride, but the Rolling Thunder Hill pulls an insane amount of negative G's that might be the strongest airtime moment in the country, if you're just looking at the numbers. From my personal experience, I'm ranking it 3rd. It comes near the end of the ride. After the Camelbacks and the turnaround, the train cuts back over the first drop and then pops up before diving down to the ground, over the remnants of the old racing Woody called Rolling Thunder that operated next to El Toro for 7 years. The reason this drop is so violent is attributed to the tight footprint caused by Rolling Thunder being there. So even though it's been gone since 2013, its legend keeps on giving every time your thighs get bruised up on that ejector airtime hill. Number 2. Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point, the finale. I prefer riding Magnum in the back row. It has solid airtime through the first 3/4 of the ride, and absolutely awesome airtime during that finale of Triangle Airtime Hills. But the reason that this is number 2 is because of how strong the airtime is in the Magic Seat. Car 1, row 3. I did this for the first time in May of 2018, wanting to see if it lived up to the hype, and it absolutely did. That final run of pointy airtime hills was launching me into the lap bar so hard that it was almost too much to take. It was a pretty even split of fun and pain, but when it was all over, I realized just how absurd the Magic Seat really is. I haven't done it since, but I'll need to find time for it in the future. You have to experience that finale in the Magic Seat at least once. Number 1. Zip N Pip at Bay Beach, the Ejector Death Hill. I'll be honest, this list has some amazing airtime moments, but from my experience, the gap between the first 28 moments and the last 2 is pretty big. The Magnum finale in the Magic Seat and the Ejector Death Hill on Zip N Pip are on a different level of insane. I've heard someone compare it to being in a car crash, and even though I haven't had the pleasure of experiencing that, I can see it. Zip N Pip is a ride full of good floater airtime before it loses its mind and tries to launch you to the moon. It's the second to last hill on the ride, and it's easy for people to see the ride ending and let their guard down. Don't do that. It shocked me the first time, but even when I was expecting it the second time, it was still a jarring experience. I'd be curious to see if anyone knows the force pulled on this hill, and see how it compares with the strongest moments in the country. From personal experience, it's the most powerful single moment of airtime. So there you have it, the 30 most powerful airtime moments in North America. Let me know if I left anything off here, or maybe there's something from a park that I haven't been to that delivers some ejector that's just as good as these moments. Also, let me know in the comments below which airtime moments you've experienced were the most powerful. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. That's the best way to show your support for the channel. And if you like coaster videos and seeing things ranked up, please subscribe and check out my countdown playlist. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.